It's been a very long journey for me. It started out as just a small hobby project. I just wanted to do some research and experimenting with P2P networking. Americans could not pronounce fade.
Which means feud in Swedish.
Yeah.
It has a J in there, so it would be fedged.
Exactly. So yeah, it was pretty awkward. So we figured we have to change the name. So Valheim it was.
Valheim is the dream game release, starting as a solo project, moving up with just 5 members of a team, to finally hitting that button to release your game out into early access, into the wild that hardly has any following. Then, within 2 hours, surpassing any sales goals you ever hoped, with over 1 million copies within the first week, in the top 10 games on Steam for a solid 2 months running. Valheim was a success story like no other, but like any story, we must find our protagonist. Often you'll find development studios have their own YouTube channels to promote their games, but one thing that you won't often see is a personal YouTube channel where actual game development has been uploaded there for years. See, Richard Svensson didn't just start on Valheim and had a first success. His first video actually was uploaded 15 years ago on a project called Lucifer 2 on his YouTube channel. Then games like Steam Racer, Rocks 3, Epic Point Cloud Renderer. This is one of the most interesting YouTube channels that I've ever seen, showing off things like Tolroko, other titles that have been worked on in the past, until we get to 2017, where the first footage of Fade, massive P2P Viking survival game, was uploaded, showing off an open world with zombies or baddies to fight. Small or very basic shapes, nothing really going on except from the basic outlines of what we know from Valheim today. Of course, the forest looked beautiful. You can still chop down trees and they still have all the physics we know from today, but it wasn't until a little bit later that we started to see the title really come together. Once again, years before anything was posted on Iron Gate Studios' official socials.
Jesus Christ, what is this? The ground is shaking. This is actually terrifying. Okay, we better run away. Quick, run!
This was the first time we saw one of the main features that would stay into the game this day. The trolls, some terrifying bosses that would be later accompanied by other things like the huge stag at the beginning and everything that came with the more recent biomes. But as the game took shape, one question at least was on my mind. Who is this Richard Svensson? Who is this mysterious figure? His Instagram shows nothing apart from some very nice coffee and scenery, but nothing has been posted since 2018, before the game's release. His Twitter is very much the same, still this pixelated art photo. Even an interview the Embracer Group did with the entire development team of Valheim didn't get an interview with him, because Richard Svensson, the founder and the lead designer behind Valheim, seems to be a ghost, seems to be hidden in the shadows, creating and conjuring this brilliant title, but never once wanting to put his face out in front of it.
So I actually started the game as just a small spare time project, but then when I figured maybe this could actually become a real game, I quit my current job and figured I should start my own company.
After months of waiting, the buttons were pressed and Valheim was released to the public. In February of the year after the bad disease, it was time for all of us to get our hands on this new open world survival. They've later said that inspiration was based around Minecraft in terms of the development for it, to keep one game slowly updated with content coming time after time, improving and expanding upon the feedback from its customers, bringing in things like modding and then implementing them into the main games later on, and of course creating this ever-changing world, adding in biomes after biomes, bosses after bosses, a more streamlined but yet still open version of what Minecraft had to offer. And that success, paired with the beautiful stylized graphics and this Viking setting, was set up to be something special. Wait, can we just hold on a second? I want to give a bit of an opinion piece here about Valheim and its graphics. You see, I mentioned its beautiful lighting there, and this was a massive talking point on its release. People saying that they thought it was a terrible looking game, obviously not learning from, well, Minecraft, the inspired open world survival that Valheim later came to take inspiration from. But this is gorgeous, and the art style they went for was something more pixelated voxel based, but with lighting that was unlike any other game ever. Because of it, the game ran so well, and this is what made it special. You see, Minecraft's success is not only on its unique take and design, but we'd had open world games in the past, and of course, Minecraft was once again inspired by Infiniminer that came before it, yet it was accessible to everybody. It didn't matter what PC you had, whether it was a $5,000 gaming workstation or your dad's old beige box. You could play it. And Valheim went for a similar thing, and it kind of succeeded. Being able to run on almost any system, it meant that not just thousands, not just tens of thousands, but hundreds of thousands of players were able to jump into it. At a relatively low release price as well, it was a game that was almost the next Minecraft. And they didn't just succeed that in gameplay, in its beloved fan reaction, but more than anything, Jesus Christ, the game sales. As the game came out, it was almost an undisclosed surprise. I had no idea. As someone that makes historical games, and I had over 100,000 subscribers at this point, I didn't know that Valheim was coming. It's as if Coffee Stain, the publishers, didn't do much of a promotional campaign. Yet, I heard everybody talking about this. Word of mouth was the biggest promotional tool that Valheim took advantage of, and boy, did it work for it. It sold 1 million copies within the first week, 5 million copies within the first 5 weeks. In April of 2022, just over a year after its release, it hit 10 million copies sold. At the time, with a 5-person development team, Valheim was in the top 10 most concurrent games on Steam, up with the likes of CSGO, Dota 2, PlayerUnknown's Battleground, reaching almost 500,000 concurrent players at its all-time peak. And when did it accomplish that? February of 2021. Yes, it got 500,000 concurrent players within the first month of launch, which I have never seen from an unknown title. Not even AAA titles can get that. It has almost quadruple even the most popular Total War games when it comes to concurrent players, and for a historical genre, Valheim took it to another level.
Farming? Really? A man of your talents?
It's a peaceful life.
So this isn't just some lucky success. There has to be a secret key ingredient here. First of all, it was 8-player co-op. Jumping in with as many friends as possible, if you have them, you get some of the greatest of moments.
What the hell?
One of the biggest attractions though was its open world. Going between different biomes, travelling the oceans, being able to handcraft and build your own ships and explore with your friends. Different bosses could be hunted down and slayed in order to progress. Dungeons could be searched for better loot. Of course, there was a whole progression system, full integrated crafting, building towns, or living the lonely life of a Viking peasant. There was something for everybody, but it was this open world that I think took people by storm. And that was what they were improving. And this is where the first update came in.
I think it was like maybe 4 months after release that we could start to actually think about the future again and start thinking about Hearth and Home and so on.
Hearth and Home. Our first look at it came on the 9th of August. About half a year after the initial release, it took away the food bar system and integrated something new, different types of food that you could use. One of the biggest issues was fighting against the stamina bar within Valheim, and one of the bigger complaints is always not having enough, especially when it came to boss fights, so it was completely overhauled. The update improved animal husbandry and added in some of the most delicious looking food since Final Fantasy 15. The iron buckler was added in, along with the bone tower shield, a few more weapons like knives and battle axes as well. This was very much based around building up your towns the way you like it, improving new recipes and ways that they work with your playstyle, whether it's food based around increasing the longevity of your health or, of course, your stamina. New decorations, new walls and implementations that you could put inside of your buildings, thrones, cauldron upgrades, and the new Lox mounts. These guys can be found within the plains biomes, and you can equip them with saddles and finally ride into battle like you're recreating Ark Survival Evolved, but with less scummy developers. As the game grew, so did the development team, increasing up to 10 members. And with that comes less flexibility in the team. You see, Valheim had been on a streak of successes, but it can't last forever. And that brings us onto the next big update that was on its way. The Mistlands is a biome covered in constant thick mist. It covers the surface, which makes it difficult to see inside. It's rocky and hilly with large, sharp black rocks that often peek over said mists. Wisp lights and wisp torches can be used to clear out the nearby mist, but first you have to take out the new boss. Seekers have entered in. They are aggressive creatures found within the Mistlands, and they look absolutely terrifying. I'm not going to beat around the bush here. With all these new bosses, with a new biome and new hostile creatures, the Mistlands overall was pretty well received, adding in new resources that you could collect from infested mines, from creatures, from structures and terrain. Things like black marble, scrap iron, soft tissue, blue jute, and of course everything like mandibles from seeker meat to blood clots. Yeah, this was a weird fetish of an update. Overall, the update was fairly well received, apart from the fact that it came with quite a few nerfs for some current things within the game. Reddit posts start to pop up talking about the newest update in December of 2022, talking about the massive nerfs to Mistland creature damage. It almost made the game too easy for many people. But the claim was from the developers that not only was this a survival game, but many people also played it as a base building game. And the devs want to encourage this grand scaling building, especially as they're introducing dedicated servers and larger players on said servers. Because of this, the community started to talk. Do they keep the game as one single entity or split it up, letting people change the difficulties depending on whether they want to play it as a hardcore survival with bosses that can take you down in one hit, or a much more casual walk in the park, more focused on base building and community events? Despite this, mods started to enter though. The community decided that they wanted to do some changes of their own. Anything from new weaponry to buildings that could be placed down by other players. Proximity chat was added in, rune packs and other quality of life additions. Overall, the modding community for Valheim is still pretty small. It hasn't really made a big impact like many other titles, yet it is improving and it is growing. And with the Mistlands growing the title with new biomes, creatures, and of course showing that this player base is not going to slow down at any time soon, it's only a matter of time before the Valheim modding community ramps it up to the next stage. Speaking of players, where is Valheim now? You see, the reason I wanted to make this was not because Valheim was incredibly successful upon its initial release. That is part of it and part of the story, but it's because Valheim is still one of the most popular games on Steam. 24-hour peaks of over 22,000 players. Also more recently releasing on consoles in March of 2023, coming out on Xbox. So the game is growing. Still a small studio with a player base that doesn't seem to be slowing down. It seems like Valheim is still on the rise. New updates on the horizon, and what's more, a development team that seems to be ever growing. Now, I spoke at the start about Richard Svensson, the guy that seems to be hiding in the shadows that no one's ever seen. He's never really done an interview until last year. See, this whole story has been told by the guy that started this entire endeavor. His voice was in fact the first voice you heard within this video. and I suspect a voice that we'll be hearing more very, very soon. Because Valheim went from a side project by this one man into one of the greatest survival games of all time.